And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Ryan Metzler.
Hey everybody, Ryan Metzler here again, and today we're going to be taking a look at San Juan, which is a card game in which players take roles in order to take actions, which are going to allow them to build buildings, trade goods, and earn victory points. Now that I've given you a brief description of the game, why don't we take a look at what comes inside the box, how the game plays, and what my thoughts are on it. So the game of San Juan focuses around action selection. Much like many other games in this vein, Race for the Galaxy being a good example. But in this game, each player can only choose one action, and that action may only be chosen by one player. But first, the first player is going to be the governor. So whoever's the first player will be called the governor, and they're going to have several roles. The first thing is that they're going to remind people of the chapel, which is just a special card that allows you to put cards under it for victory points. The next thing they're going to do is they're going to be responsible for checking to make sure everybody's hand limit is correct. And you're not allowed to have more than 7 cards. And then they're going to start the round. So this is just basically a first player token, which has some roles that you're responsible for maintaining with it. After that, the governor is going to have a choice of choosing one of 6 actions, and the actions all have different benefits. So each player is going to have a hand of cards, and they're going to be trying to play those cards in order to best earn victory points. And they're going to do so through these actions. So the first is the prospector, and it has no action. So you choose this, and the action is nothing, so nothing happens for all of the players. But the privilege is whoever chooses this action, the one person that chooses this, gets to draw 1 card. So this is basically a way to say, hey, only I get something out of this action. The next action is the builder, and this would allow everybody to build cards out of their hand. And when you build cards, you're going to be paying cards in order to build them. So you can see here, this is the guild hall, and it's going to cost 6 to build, meaning that you have to discard 6 cards from your hand in order to put this into play. And so this says action, each player can build 1 building, and you would do so by discarding the cards, but the privilege is that the person who chooses this role pays 1 card less. So in order to build this 6th card, they'd only have to pay 5, and they'd place these discarded out, and this card would go in front of them if they paid the 5 cards. And so everybody gets to take that action, but whoever chose it gets to take it for the benefit. Produce is going to allow you to put goods onto buildings, and there are certain types of buildings that produce goods, and these are going to be called production buildings, and everybody starts with one. You can see this is an indigo plant, which if you were to have to play it from your hand, would cost you 1 card. But it says during the producer phase, the owner of this produces 1 indigo. Now, every player, when you take the producer action, can produce 1 good, but the privilege is that whoever chooses this action gets to produce an additional one. So if they had 2 different production buildings in play, they would produce 2 different goods. And when you produce goods, you simply take a card, and you're going to put it on top of it to show that it has a good. So that's producer. Then we have the counselor, and counselor is kind of like the prospector, except for that when you take this, everybody gets to choose 1 of 2 cards. So what that means is that everybody's going to draw 2 cards, they're going to take a look at them, and you're going to choose to keep one of these. These are both very expensive cards, but that are also worth a lot of victory points. And so I decide which one of these I want to keep. One is based on how many different monuments I have. These are monuments. And one is just simply 5 victory points. So I'm going to keep the 5 victory point one, and I'll throw that other one into the discard pile. But the benefit is the person that chooses the counselor gets to draw an additional 3 cards. Now, they don't keep those 3. They draw, instead of 2, they draw 5, and they keep 1. The last action is trader, and what trader does is it allows you to sell goods that you have produced on your production building. So you can see here, you choose this, and every player, whenever somebody chooses this, is allowed to sell 1 good. However, the privilege is that the trader sells an additional good. Now, trading cards in is a little bit of a different situation, and there are special plaques that come with the game that tell you how much trading cards in is worth. So you can see these plaques here. There's 5 of them, and what you do is these will be shuffled and placed face down. And whenever somebody sells a good, or whenever somebody chooses the trader, one of these would get flipped over. And so let's say somebody chose trader, and we flip this over, and it's going to tell you how much the different goods sell for. And so it tells you that blue goods, which would be that indigo there, sell for 1 card. So I could sell this good, and I would draw 1 card. The white goods, which are actually going to be sugar, would sell for 1 as well. So if I were to sell a sugar off of a sugar mill, I would discard the sugar and I would draw 1 card. We also have tobacco, and tobacco in this case also sells for 1. So if I were to have a tobacco in play and it were to have a good on it, I could discard that and get 1 card. But you see, as you get the more expensive building, so this coffee roaster here is a 4 building, it's going to give me more cards for selling the goods. And we have silver, which is a 5 cost building, which is going to give me 2 goods. So the more expensive goods you have, the more cards you're going to get for them. And the amount that you're going to get is going to vary throughout the game. So you'll see sometimes some goods are worth 3. Sometimes some of the lower goods are worth 2. It all varies depending on which tile flips up. And the game is going to go on with you building buildings, getting benefits out of those buildings, and earning victory points. So you'll see that some buildings have special things. For example, the quarry says that during the builder phase, you pay 1 less card when you have this building in play for any violet buildings that you build, and then it's also worth 2 victory points. Or let's say we have the bank. During the governor phases, which are the beginning of the turn, once per game, the owner of this card can put as many cards from his hand underneath the bank, which is this card, and each card will score 1 VP at the end of the game. And so you can be looking for combinations of cards that work well together in order to get more victory points at the end of the game. And the game's going to progress with players building buildings through building actions and trading goods and getting more cards until one player manages to put a 12th card into play. So here we have 5. If that player had gotten 7 more cards, the game would end. And after that, you're going to total up how many victory points you have. And those are going to be in the forms of these points on the bottoms of the card. So for example, 1 victory point for this indigo plant, or 2 victory points for the quarry. And so essentially, it's going to be a series of taking actions and then passing first play to the left. That person will then start the next round and take their actions until one player gets 12 cards into play. The game ends, and you total up your victory points. The person with the most victory points wins the game. So San Juan is the card game that really introduced me to this style of game, with the action selection, the roles, and then the specific benefit for the person that chose each individual role. And it's done very well. It's very easy to understand. The cards are very clear, and it's generally just a very good game. Now, there are other games that do the same thing, or very similar things, such as Race for the Galaxy, which I do prefer a little bit more because it's a little heavier. Now, the iconography is not as easy to understand, but if you can get past that, it's also a great game. But that's not something I want to use to detract from how great San Juan is. It's a very, very well done game. It has a nice feel to it where you feel like you're building an engine in order to earn more victory points. And if you know what you're doing, you can definitely adopt strategies to sift through the deck and find the right cards that are going to benefit you the most. So, if you're interested in this type of game, and especially one that's very easy to understand and learn to play, I would suggest taking a very good look at San Juan. It's a very good game, and I think that it's probably one that will appeal to lots and lots of different audiences.
Thanks for joining us today. For more written, audio, and video reviews, as well as the #1 board game podcast, check out the website at www.thedicetower.com. Until then, this is Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower.
Yeah?